Hi, welcome. Good afternoon, everybody. I am your SLI.DO facilitator. My name is Mandy Gagliardi. Very excited to welcome you today to our webinar on inspiring a collaborative sense of urgency. Before we get started, I just want to make sure that I can help you get connected to our SLI.DO where we take your questions, you can submit answers to live polls as well. It's pretty easy. We usually say that the easiest way to do it is to go through your mobile phone. You can use the phone or the camera on your phone, point it right at the QR code on the screen, and it should prompt you to open up the event in Slido. You can also open a web browser, go to SLI.DO.com and use the code on the screen. It's urgent to get connected to the event. Once you're there, there's some screenshots here for how it's going to look on your phone. If you're doing it on a computer, pretty similar. You can answer polls in the polls section. We have a couple live polls that you're going to be engaging in today, and also submit your questions throughout the session for Pat to answer at the end and the Q&A. And also you're going to be able to access some of the resources, as well as we'll send some in follow up if you use the three little burgers at the top left, burger icon at the top left of the screen. So with that, I would like to introduce you to our host today, Dr. Pat Greco.
Thanks, Mandy, and thanks everyone for joining us. Hope your holiday weekend was relaxing. I am Pat Greco. I've been in public education for 38 years, half of that time serving as superintendent in 2 different school districts in the state of Wisconsin. I still live right near Milwaukee, and I'm fortunate now to work with a highly skilled team of improvers at Studer Education. Today's focus is collective urgency. When we lead organizations, it really means we're leading people. And to share urgency, we really need to share that focus on the process that we use to build, to engage our people in learning from what they do every day together, and to work together to create better outcomes for themselves individually, as well as their teams across the organization. Today, we're going to talk about leading together, shifting leader anxiety into really an improver's mindset. How do we do that together, and how do we help one another do that? And then investing in our people and really investing in what works. And how do we know? And how do we stop investing in what isn't working for us, but is really bleeding organizational capacity? Then at the end, we're going to be opening it up to questions and answers. If you plug in your name when you're in the chat, it'll help me get back to you with specific answers to your questions, if that's appropriate. When we become leaders, we do so because we care and really want to serve one another, and we want to make a difference. We focus on the team that's right in front of us, and often early in our careers, we forget that the team we're serving is really that larger organization. And to help the people right in front of us actually see their roles at serving beyond just our division, just our school, and beyond the silo that we typically fall into a trap of working in. So as we think about today, what I want you to think about are the processes that we design the system that helps us harness that collective energy and really make it work with us and for us, so that we grow individually, we grow as a team and division, but we're really doing so in service of that broader organization. So as we start today, we're really going to start with the first poll. To what extent do your leaders work together across divisions to achieve what matters most? We're going to give you a minute to weigh in, meaning 1, you really function in silos, a lot of we-they behavior going on, or a 10, you feel like your organization is fully aligned and team members are working together cross divisions to really improve the organization as a whole. So Mandy, how are we doing?
Well, overall, we're sitting at about a 7.3, but we do have about 6% of the audience at a level 1 right now, 6% at 4. The majority are at 39% sitting around a 7.
Great, that's good to know. And really, realistically, we know that we've got some people who are working together in an aligned way, building that shared sense of knowledge to improve the system. You're able to work together toward those big aims. Leaders either build capacity to work across departments, or they have a tendency to isolate themselves. That way, leaders have a tendency to stay stuck. They can make decisions that protect their own team at the expense of teams that they're working with across the organization. And they can really demonstrate that we-they behavior, so then their team members often do too. So what our goal is to try to build our systems so that we really have that aligned effort at our individual level, but really toward that organizational aim. So we think about the center of our strategic bullseye, and we think about that collective urgency. It's built, it's not an accident. It has to be intentional. That alignment starts with that center of that strategic bullseye. What do we care about? If it's increased access, if it's increased ability to close those achievement gaps, if it's really making sure that we know how we're improving and whether or not our kids are able to successfully transition to what matters most for them. We really have to start in that outer ring with those rapid tests of what's working, how do we know, and then build that sense of scale, and then really scale only the things that work well. When we have aligned teams, we have a tendency to use our resources in a better way. We don't make rash decisions on reductions. We really do it intentionally based on knowing what works and really refining the resources that aren't gaining us the power of the system. We have to learn how to work together and to see the system that's at work and what's not working within the system. Skilled people improving processes and removing barriers together. So as we think about that, how effective are we in our current decision-making process and budgeting process and really improving what matters most? Not effective to really realizing the improvements in a highly skilled way. I'm going to give you a minute again to weigh in. And Mandy, I'll let you weigh in on the results.
Sure. So we're looking at about a 6.8 over the average, with there actually being a tie between a 7 and an 8. So far, we haven't seen anybody at the 1 level at completely not effective, but we are seeing 5% who are rating about a 2, 11% at about a 4. Overall, 6.6.
Great, and thank you for your feedback and taking the time to do that. When we think about leader anxiety, we know that we go into leadership wanting to make that difference, and we also know that as leaders, we're painfully human. Our desires and our emotion to serve well can actually block our own ability to lead effectively. We can be that park ranger leader that wants to save the day rather than build capacity, or we want to ease the burden on others. So we actually take away their capacity to see that larger system at work and engage in the problem solving. We can overthink it. And in that perfectionist mode, rather than trying to engage people, we can overthink it to a point where we're blocking people from seeing the problems at work that we're trying to solve. We can avoid issues that are challenging the teams or challenging team dynamics. Our old habits can block our ability to grow ourselves and our people in those most challenging moments. And we, as I indicated before, can demonstrate that we-they behavior, which actually creates almost that victim mentality of we're stuck because somebody else is in control of the hardest decisions that we have to solve. So as we think about building that team capacity and really making that work of improvement and problem solving closest to those challenges that we face and really engaging in that collective brain power, we want to look toward that right. If you think about the bullseye, this tip of the triangle really goes right into the heart of the organization. How are we working in aligned systems and aligning the measures that matter most and improving the way that we align our time, our talent, the resources of the organization, really to that informed learning. What's working? How are we focusing our development on what's working within the system, that systemic coaching so that we can remove barriers and remove what isn't working out of the system and the processes, and building that shared knowledge so that we really are targeting those big aims. Too often in an organization, we start at that base of being our daily work, then taking a look at how are we doing, and then aligning what's left into that team development when we have time for it, as opposed to viewing it as every day, that embedded learning, that embedded coaching, that work of the system to improve our processes and really lift the entire team to have those hardest conversations well. When we think about resource allocations, I'm targeting budgets as the example, but it's really all of the resources, our people, the way we organize our system, the way we meet together, how we allocate the resources of the organization. What we want is to move toward the is. We don't want it isolated or reactive or static programming that we then try to figure out how do we gain extra money in order to do improvement. When we're in tight budget times, we don't want to do a straight budget percentage allocation across the board because we've got parts of the system that are really gaining us capacity and really creating value. We want to really, we don't want to reduce the learning out of the system or wait for our budgets to improve. We really want to move into that aligned priority and system, making it visible how we're monitoring what's working, and that off of that balance scorecard, and really driving those real improvement and learning cycles deep into the organization. We want to learn, create value, and adjust, and really move into that cross-training, our succession planning, our coaching in a very intentional way. A visual of the strategic cycle really starts in that upper right-hand corner with the strategic update. Our annual time, we typically did it in August with the board and the full leadership team to look at the year back and the 18 months ahead, really setting those stretch goals, revising our strategy, identifying the improvement projects that were going to be the priority for the year off of our current data. We would then move to the left of setting those predictions and setting for a 45-day and 90-day improvement cycles. We would align our funding and our resources intentionally off of that process, moving into those 45-day cycles of, are we aligning our people effectively? Are we putting our extra supports and our coaching where it needs to be off of our data? And then are we monitoring frequently and really looking at that the weekly, monthly, and daily outcomes and quarterly outcomes, so that we're going back into that strategic alignment. So as we think about the year, we would start in August, we would go to November with a 45-day update, February, May, do a review in June, and then prepare for the next strategic update in August. As we think about building leadership at every level of the organization, you'll have this slide so you can read it all the way down to the classroom level of how it nests. But I'm going to target most specifically the time that we spent together with the leadership team as a whole, meaning assistant principals, principals, division leaders, their leadership team members, and our board members. I would meet with cabinet every Tuesday morning. Our full leadership team would meet for a couple of hours twice a month. Our full leadership team then met every 45 days. We typically would include the Board of Education in that. I would use leader rounding and our feedback systems to really drive those conversations around those big aims and what we're learning from our improvement cycles. I would round with the board a couple of times a year individually and quarterly with the board committees, again, targeting what those big aims were and how did we know. We would use huddles on a weekly basis or quarterly basis, daily basis, depending on the issue. And then we also included, as I indicated earlier, the board in those 90-day updates and the strategic alignment. Everything was driven from our scorecard and the feedback that we were learning from the system. We had coaching at every level, from our classroom teachers to our support staff, all the way up to our superintendent level, of how are we as a team getting better and how are we building the capacity of our leadership team to really focus on our skills to improve the organization. And how are we learning? And then how are we sustaining the core competencies and the knowledge building of the organization for every position, and building that deep bench so that we would absolutely have that deep problem solving capacity well within each part of the organization. And then cascading communication effectively so that we could really learn from the system. The improver's mindset pulls us out of those urgencies as a leader into really how can we build quality together as a team. Anyone can cut a budget badly. You know, our ability as a leadership team is to really make those informed decisions. We can't delegate quality, or we can't wait until we have time or the brain power to tackle it. It really has to be the core work that we do. The skill of our people is the most important investment we make as a leadership team, and it has to be our highest priority as the leaders really designing the system. Costs go down when we build quality and effectiveness and create value within the organization. Outcomes go up. You know, it's our greatest investment that we have. So the focus, the intention, the alignment, the capability of the leaders really drives the quality of the system. When we think about prioritizing, we know we must do certain things as we're heading into the year ahead. And we know we value deeply providing opportunities that go beyond those basic musts. So as we think about that, we also know our revenue is typically in 6 major categories. I outlined the ones that typically represented the organizations that I served. Our greatest investment was in our people, our salary, the healthcare, the total benefits that we provided. Transportation for our districts were typically high. Operational expenses, special education, equipment, other services. The amount over here where we typically try to tackle and nitpick budgets are really small dollar amounts in comparison to where we invest the greatest amount of resources within the organization. We need our people investment and all of our other operations to run really effectively and to know what's working for us so that we can get the greatest value out of those. So in order to invest and maximize value, we've got to be looking at our programming alignment. We've got to look at how we're allocating our people. We need that deep coaching, and we need coaching all the way through the system. We can't hope that we have aligned leadership, we have to design it with intention. And we have to build that equal skill set to actually build that army of improvers throughout the system. We need our processes and our services to remove the barriers and solve problems with the real work of the organization. And we need that skill set all the way through down to the frontline people who are greeting the people that visit our buildings, who are working at the night shifts, on the weekends, during the entire heartbeat of the organization at work. We need our healthcare options to really sustain quality and lower costs. We need our staffing models and our equipment investments to really sustain satisfaction and really create the value of what we're trying to accomplish within those big aims. I've given this to you so that you see the flow of the year, August, September, all the way to June, so that you could read how we organize the work of the system. It's too much detail to go through here, but I wanted you to see how that system was at work. Now we're going to take a few minutes just to open it up to what questions do we have. And if you want to weigh in on the chat, if you include your name, if you have any detailed questions, I'll be happy to follow up on them as well. Question, where would you start in assessing existing skills? And where there isn't alignment, make informed investments. Each district is going to have some areas where, when you think about what is working for you and how do you know, start first with, in an ideal state, you're going to start with having a balanced scorecard so that you have weighed in already on what do you value most. On the existing skill sets, think about the areas where you're having the greatest success. How do you actually know that's making a difference, and how do you create part of that spread? I can share with you an example of our learning plan for our entire organization on what everyone needed to be skilled in, down to the specifics of individual areas. And I'll be happy to post that as part of the resources. We called it our adult learning framework, so that we would have those competencies outlined and that we would build our teams into that, both through succession planning and our onboarding. Thank you for weighing in on the question. Any other questions? How do you have honest conversations with leaders who are stuck? It's a great question, and you know that their passions are there. That's really where I felt leader rounding helped me first with developing the relationship with the people, because we know everyone is human and they're starting where they're starting. And if you're a new leader to an organization, you're going to have to build that organizational capacity. So when we post the leader rounding, you'll have an opportunity. How do you know what's in their heart and their heads? How can you help them see that role of building the capacity of their entire team? Clear is kind, and unclear is unkind. So too often we try to safeguard feelings without really being explicit. People can't improve unless they really can see that line of sight and the why behind it. So really building that leadership capacity, pulling everyone into that understanding of what those big aims are, and then starting that conversation. We can post some of the performance conversations as examples, but that also is part of that clear coaching for the leadership team of how do you manage up the people who are really pulling on the same end of the rope toward that big aim? And how do you give really clear feedback to the people who are struggling and aren't yet seeing that line of sight? His comment was, I was told to stay in my place. How do you avoid being busy all the time, but not really accomplishing what's important? So, and then I'm going to come back to the other one. I apologize for that. Being busy all the time, we can fill every minute of every day in that sense of false urgency. And really what we have to do is be disciplined with our own time to make sure that we're prioritizing that time to connect with people on our team. We build right into our 45-day cycles and our agendas, that real work of the improvement process. We have to prioritize tracking the real measures that matter so that we know we're improving. And I, as a leader, have to actually drive that conversation of what's improving, where's the barriers, and how do we prioritize our leadership agendas around that real work. There are no honest conversations. I was told to stay in my place when addressing safety concerns. When we think about the organization itself, we have to remember that areas that we have to influence off of safety and really making sure that we're having those hard conversations effectively so that we're not attacking, but we're really having those clear conversations of, I feel it's my obligation to weigh in, and making sure that we're providing the why behind it and the real evidence that we have. And we also have to make sure that we're comfortable working for the organization itself, and making sure that we have that line of sight into the work of the system. Matt Hillman is a great leader. Matt, thanks for weighing in. What keywords at key times do you use to clearly articulate the programs that aren't working and haven't improved over interventions and have to go? One of the things with keywords is keeping the why right in front of the team. We had to redo most of our career pathways for students off of old programming that was more traditional. There were heavy passion points where people had developed coursework that was really passionate for them in areas of interest, but wasn't leading into the pathways for the students. So keeping it the why in front of them, making sure that they're engaged in the process, investing in their skill development as a team so that they're not designing everything after hours, and you're really prioritizing that work of the system to making sure that that work is getting kids to those successful transitions. And we may have programs that we've really valued that are the right intervention, but they're not creating the powerful results. So that's really where the instructional coaches having the opportunity to help people really look at the data and look where the bright spots are, and then how do we move into that. So the keywords at the key times, Matt, is really starting with that deep why. How do you accomplish this from the middle? You can improve any work of a team starting in the middle. You can't move the entire organization without the senior leadership being involved. So it's an excellent question, but we all create bottlenecks. So if I'm a division leader and my behavior isn't aligned, my department is going to suffer. If I'm a superintendent and my cabinet isn't aligned, the organization will suffer. As a teacher, though, and as a building principal and as a division leader, I can lead exceptionally well, and I can make sure that our team is demonstrating that shared commitment. So I can model it, I can make an impact, I can grow it, I can influence it, but I can't control it in the divisions that would typically be line of sight. How can you prevent overthinking and perfectionism as a leader? It's an excellent question, because I think all of us go into this, trying to make sure that we're doing the very best job we can. All I can say is we don't have to have all the answers if our target is providing the best structures to make sure that we have powerful brain power around our most wicked challenges. I would rather invest that time with the team than sitting in my office alone, trying to think through every barrier. If I can get down and use the leader rounding to really understand what barriers are in people's way, that brain power helps me be that informed leader, so that as we're pulling teams together, we really have that pulse check over time. It's a great question, and I appreciate everyone weighing in. We're at the end of time at 3:30. I really appreciate the time together. Know that if you have any follow-up questions, put your name in there. I'll be happy to get back to you individually. As we take a look at the registrations, I encourage you to join us again next week. Every week at 3 o'clock on Tuesdays, we're really focused on making sure that we're addressing the pressing needs for right now. So have a great week, and we look forward to having you join us again.